Hey guys, how you doing? Luna here with a new video for the channel. How you're doing today? As you can see in the title, we have a pretty interesting video today. Here we're talking about Queen, Freddie Mercury to be exact. I've seen thousands and thousands of people saying online that Freddie Mercury is the greatest performer slash vocalist slash, overall frontman in the history of music. And if you've seen my videos, probably not, no one does, but if you've seen them, then you probably know that I'm not all that crazy about this hype train that everyone's has on Queen, thinking Queen is the greatest band ever, Freddie Mercury is the greatest artist ever. I don't really agree with that. I have said multiple times on this channel that I do believe that Queen, Freddie Mercury, all of them are really talented people, and they're a candidate for being one of the best bands of all time. But are they the best? I don't really think so. It was even more clear in my ranked video where I ranked Queen's entire discography, if you want to check that out, that I didn't have the best opinion on the vast majority of Queen albums, because I think that, when you talk about candidates that Queen has for the greatest albums of all time, you can basically just grab one, and that is The Night at the Opera. The rest are just not, are great albums, but are just not a contendant to be the best album ever. I've said multiple times that, Freddie's popularity can be boiled down to a few things. Number one, and the main one, I am willing to accept this, and is the fact that he was an amazing performer, an amazing vocalist, a really talented man, but also because of the anthems that Queen wrote. I believe, and this may offend some people, but I believe the fact that he had AIDS also kind of contributed to the popularity of Freddie Mercury, because it was quite a hell of a thing back in the day. And also, even if you may not like to admit it, the fact that he was one of the first mainstream artists who came out as someone that was gay kind of contributes to the new, the modern popularity that Queen acquired. Again, when I say this, I'm not trying to say that Freddie Mercury was not an actual genius. He was. I do love every single one of the albums, or a majority of them I do. I'm willing to say that Queen doesn't really have a bad album. I'm just saying that, Queen's popularity can be tracked down to things other than just music, and especially in the case of Freddie Mercury. Apart from that, in this video, I want to focus on nothing else but music. And, I want to ask the question, and I want interaction in this video. Is Freddie Mercury the greatest singer slash performer of all time? And I do want to make clear that for you to be a great singer, that doesn't necessarily mean technical ability or skills at the time of performing. It means how much can you communicate the message that you're trying to communicate. That's the main thing. That's what an artist is supposed to have. Also versatility. How many different styles can this artist pull off? It sort of boils down to what you prefer as a listener. For me, if you want to know my opinion, who the greatest performers are, I would argue that Robert Plant from Led Zeppelin was one of my favorites. I loved, how versatile he was, how he can make a rock and roll tune, a heavy rock and roll tune, and sounded, menacing, sounded aggressive, sexy as well, and also can pull off a beautiful folk song like Going to California. I also enjoyed the amount of chemistry that, that Robert Plant and Jimmy Page had at the time in every single Led Zeppelin album. It's almost like they're going back and forth, against each other. Jimmy Page with his guitar and Robert Plant with his vocals. That chemistry is amazing, and it shows how much of a dynamic singer Robert Plant was. We also have Ella Fitzgerald, pretty much the same thing as Robert Plant. I do believe that she had way better dynamics and way more technical ability. If you listen to an Ella Fitzgerald song, you can tell that she's going to do something unique. Even if it's a cover, most of her songs were, you're gonna find a different type of cover. I covered that it's an Ella Fitzgerald cover, and I always enjoy that from her. I believe that she has an amazing talent. She had an amazing talent. And another personal favorite, and maybe my favorite, is Paul McCartney. I do know that the man can be quite overrated in terms of register and how loud can he sing, but I believe that he basically just pulled off every sound that I enjoy. He can be melodic, beautiful, like in the track Yesterday and Let It Be. He can also be, gruesome, really distorted in tracks like Helter Skelter, or maybe Monkberry Moon Delight, or perhaps the song I've Got a Feeling, where he's going all out in this rock and rollers. You can also see him, pulling off some great rock and roll covers, like for example Kansas City and Long Tall Sally by Little Richard, another amazing performer. Paul McCartney just had it all, he has one of the greatest vocal performances on any song I've ever listened to on the track Oh Darling. that performance is amazing. And also the way that he was kind of ad-libbing himself in tracks like Hey Jude. I just love the way that it sounds. Given that, you can tell that the type of singers I like go far beyond technical ability. Paul McCartney and Robert Plant were not great examples of how technical a person can be in terms of singing. Even though Ella Fitzgerald was kind of a prowess in terms of technical ability, I do believe that what made her so great was the flow and the dynamics of his singing, how she could change styles and in the middle of a song, and she can improvise in so well. In the case of Freddie Mercury, it sort of depends on which stage of his career you want to focus on. For example, if you want to talk about the early rock opera, progressive rock thing that we're doing, and heavy rock as well, if you want to focus on those albums, that I can agree with you, he was kind of like the best at it. He had this ability to make everything sound so epic and so accomplished. It doesn't really matter if he was going in the loudest notes possible. He seemed so effortless, and he was able to like play around in those high notes. That, along with Brian May's guitar and Roger Taylor's drumming, made some amazing compositions. And actually, that early Queen is actually my favorite Queen. Up until A Night at the Opera, albums like Queen 1, Queen 2, Sheer Heart Attack offered a really versatile and really accomplished Freddie Mercury as a vocalist, not as much as a songwriter.
Wow!
Some of the songs there can be quite repetitive, and they sort of had a formula that they exhausted by the end of Sheer Heart Attack. Instead, in A Night at the Opera and A Day at the Races, and even till Jazz, Freddie Mercury tried to focus more on how he can, play around with his voice, knowing that he was basically a perfect singer in terms of, skills. How could he modify his voice to try and do new things with his recordings? And that's the reason why we have songs, for example, like Caesar Rendezvous, where we see all of this different, harmonies that he did with himself, like he alone created a full harmony. It's not the first time we've seen it, but it's the first time we saw it in that style. It's kind of hard to explain. I definitely recommend for you to check out that album if you want to know what I'm talking about. In that same album, he also does things like Love of My Life, where he goes into a really high falsetto voice. It's really beautiful. And overall, I'm willing to say that this stage, at least up to this point, Freddie Mercury kind of showed that he was the best at it, not only in terms of singing, but in terms of how versatile he was, how many styles he could pull off. He could pull off a ballad just as much as he could pull off one of these high-noted progressive rock tunes. So why is it exactly that I don't have Freddie Mercury as one of my favorite vocalists ever? It's because of what happened in the 80s. If you saw, again, this is a great plug for me, but I definitely want you to check that video out, my ranked series of Queen albums. You can basically tell my thoughts on Queen's 80s discography. I believe that it's when Queen flopped like hell. There are some good albums here and there, and actually there's no bad album here, but it's you can clearly tell that there was a new low for Queen in terms of quality. And that new low sort of was Freddie's fault, not only because of songwriting being less and less interesting, but also and mainly because his vocals didn't quite fit into this new style of music that the 80s brought. In the 80s, a lot of the rock bands that were going around in the 70s, like Led Zeppelin, the Rolling Stones, The Who, they didn't know what to do. It was a different type of music. It was more digital. It went almost against everything that rock music had done up to that point. So it was really awkward to change into that new style. And actually, all of the bands I mentioned before had a really hard time getting used to that sound. The Rolling Stones never released another album as great. The same thing with The Who. The same thing with Black Sabbath, for example. So it's kind of normal that Queen had this issue too, and I believe that if we kind of explore the main rock and roll bands of the 70s, Queen is the one that kind of, continued okay with albums like The Works. The main problem of the album is that because of Freddie's vocals being almost made for a rock tune, it was kind of hard to adapt them to these pop tunes that we were forced to do in the 80s or dance tunes. And that happened even in his solo discography, which I would say it's not good. And again, you don't really need to believe me. You can go ahead, listen to Hot Space, The Game. You can listen to Some Kind of Magic, The Miracle. Oh my God, The Miracle. You'll see for yourself that, Freddie is not comfortable in this sound. Even if he liked it, even if he liked the whole groove, he was not, in terms of vocals, he was not happy with it. And this is something that, again, it happened to Robert Plant as well. Robert Plant did not release that many amazing albums in the 80s, but right now, I believe that Robert Plant's type of singing is way more relevant relevant and way more acceptable than Queen's early albums, which is the reason why Queen 1, 2, and Sheer Heart Attack are albums almost invisible to the majority of the Queen stans. It is important for the people watching this video to remember that I'm talking only about the studio recordings. I'm not talking about the live performances, because if you want to argue the fact that Freddie Mercury was the best frontman in terms of live performances, then yes, 100% yes, he had an amount of energy, and so he was so versatile on stage and came up with so many good ideas, so many ways to improvise, so a way of connecting with the crowd that no other artists have come even close to. He did some of the best performances, and actually what I believe is one of the best performances of all time, in the Live Aid in 1985. So in this this regard, in the live versions, then yes, he was the best. 100%. Freddie had a really hard time adapting to the 80s sound, and I won't even tell you about the 90s with Innuendo, which ever so slightly suggests that he wasn't really all that great at the time of adapting to a new genre. And that's something that's crucial for any, amazing performer you may come to, you may bring to the table. Again, it almost seems like I don't like Queen, and that's not the case. I do believe, again, let me repeat it, so for everyone listening, don't get confused. I love Queen. I love Freddie Mercury as an artist. I think he was a genius, and in technically speaking, he was one of the greatest performers of all time. But I have a fair amount of artists who perform in ways and communicate feelings and, have a wider and more versatile a catalog of songs and albums that I find more enjoyable rather than Queen and Freddie Mercury's catalog in terms of variety. And again, if you want some sort of proof of what I'm saying or whatever, I don't need to give it, because this is just my opinion. But if you want some, then go ahead, listen to the songs, listen to Led Zeppelin's discography, listen to Queen's discography, and you will find that there's a huge difference in terms of variety, versatility, and overall, energy at the time of performing the songs in the studio. The same thing with Paul. I think that it's obvious that Paul kind of transitioned into the 80s and pop music way better than Freddie Mercury did. There's a fair amount of singers that I can kind of enjoy more than listening to Freddie Mercury. Again, not talking about technical ability. I'm pretty sure that Freddie Mercury could hit the highest notes out of every single artist I just named. I'm talking about overall performance, how much, how many emotions they could communicate with me, the amount of variety inside of their catalog, and the amount of, proficiency in which they performed in every single one of the genres that, they toiled in. So, at the end of the day, the question remains, is Freddie Mercury the greatest performer / singer / vocalist / frontman? It sort of depends on your, or your music taste. It sort of depends on how you want to look at things. It sort of depends if you want to compare the entirety of the man's career, or you only want to focus on his peak, his prime. But for me personally, I do believe that he is one of the best, and in his own style, he definitely was one of the best. But overall, I don't really think that he has the best catalog to prove that out. That will be it for today's video, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed it. If you did, go ahead and leave a like on the video and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any other videos that I upload. I want to know your opinion on the case of Freddie Mercury. Do you think he is the best singer ever in music, or do you think that he's not? If not, let me know who's your favorite, and let me know your reasons below in the comments. I'll make sure to check it out and give you a quick shout out on my next video. Also, if you want to see more Queen videos, I have multiple on my channel. I talk about the fact that maybe Queen is a bit overrated as the greatest band of all time. I also rank their entire discography, and I'm preparing a video ranking every single song from them, so subscribe to the channel if you don't want to miss that. With that being said, again, I hope that you enjoyed, and I hope I can see you soon, guys, with another video. But until then, bye.